Halfon, what brings you to Passmores Academy today?
Well, I wanted the ministers. Passmores does incredible work with children with special educational needs. They do great work for children with mental health difficulties as well. And I wanted the ministers to come down to see what is going on here, all the wonderful work that Passmores School is doing, so they can take that back to the government and actually make things better and learn from the best practice of Passmores School. So we've been meeting children here today. We're here with two ministers from the government, from the Department for Education and also the Department of Health, and it's been an incredible morning. I'm really happy to have come.
So these are two specific ministers with two specific briefs, and that's relevant to why they're visiting here?
Well, first one is the Minister for Children, who does a lot of work on children with special educational needs, children mental health, and then we've got the Gillian Keegan, who went to Harlow College many years ago. She is Minister for Health, and she looks at mental health as well and other things and autism. And so what they're here, Passmores is literally one of the schools that is known for best practice in this area, helping a lot of kids who have disadvantages or disabilities or special educational needs. And it's important that they learn what is going on here and how things can be improved so that they can roll out best practice for other schools that may not be as good as Passmores at looking after these children.
And at some stage, in you put in your committee hat, will these ministers be in front of you making presentations relevant to these subjects?
Very much so. In fact, I had one of the ministers, the MP for Colchester, is here, Will Quince. Children. He came to my committee. I chair Education Committee in Parliament only a few weeks ago, and I questioned him heavily on special educational needs, children with special educational needs. It's an area I have a lot of passion for, and I've tried to make things better. And the government have just come out with a whole load of proposals to improve life for children with special educational needs. We're going to hold the government feet to the fire, so to speak, try and help them make things better. Hopefully they'll support some of the things they've done. They've come up with some of their own recommendations, and to improve both in terms of funding but also the work that they do for children with special educational needs.
And finally, there's a hub here, but what happens, are there equivalents in sixth form provision, in universities? Is there support there?
Well, there are some primary hubs. I've seen them in the town primary schools. There needs to be more in schools. Vic Goddard said he's talking to Harlow College, for example, about opening one. I'd like to see them rolled out in as many schools as possible so parents have a real choice. And that's also one of the reasons why they're here. And the schools minister who's here, the children's minister I should say, Will Quince, has announced more funding for these kind of hubs, which are brilliant. But we also heard from other children today about mental health difficulties and the problems social media is causing them. And one child said she loves TikTok, but she wished she could get off it, and she wished it was banned. And yet she still loves it. And these kind of social media companies I've been targeting because I think they can cause a lot of damage to kids if they're not used properly, and because of a lot of stuff that goes on about it that all of us who are adults who aren't so aware of these things. So I proposed a social media levy, a tax on social media companies that would raise about £200 million, so we could spend that on helping children with mental health resilience and learning how to deal with social media companies like TikTok and WhatsApp and Instagram and Snapchat.
So there's a lot, but finally there's a lot when it comes to mental health, and there's a lot of challenges. And we don't know that in our day, whatever, or maybe longer for me, but there's a lot of challenges, a lot of pressures on children, isn't there?
It's massive. So when I grew up, I wasn't taught the word mental health as a child, although I grew up at school having a walking disability. It never came up. And yet I go, not just part of my job as chairman of the Education Committee, is I have to visit schools all around the country and colleges. And every time I speak to children, they talk about mental health problems. It never came up when I was growing up. There is a thing. We've just heard today that eating disorders have gone up hugely. Children's self-harming gone up hugely because partly, not solely, but partly because of lockdown. Schools closed for most pupils, not all, but most pupils. And there's a lot of work to be done, and this must be a priority for the government to make sure we do everything possible to help children get through this, working with schools like Passmores, who are leading the way in this area, to try and help and make sure that people don't have mental health difficulties and actually have mental health resilience. And as I say, I mentioned a moment ago in answer to your question, dealing with social media and the problems that causes is one of those things that we've got to get to grips with.